time out of your busy day to learn more about the progress and plans we have made for enhancements concerning Tony Marron Park and the surrounding area along that stretch of Buffalo Bayou. I'm sure some of you received Facebook ads and you may not be familiar with who Buffalo Bayou Partnership is. We are the nonprofit whose mission is to revitalize and restore Buffalo Bayou from Shepherd Drive to the Port of Houston turning basin, which is essentially a 10-mile stretch. You might be familiar with our first couple of projects, including Buffalo Bayou Park, but we're working into and past downtown. So basically what we're doing here today is we performed a series of in-person community meetings before the pandemic over a couple of years to get the input from the 5th Ward and East End communities to find out what they want in green spaces and trails and amenities along this stretch of Buffalo Bayou. So from those meetings, a master plan was derived to respond to what people want. And what we're doing with these virtual meetings now, specifying certain areas like Tony Marron Park, is to make sure that we're doing what the community wants. And that's why we want to hear from you and make sure that what we're planning on implementing is what you actually want. Please know that later in the spring, we hope to host an in-person event, maybe at Tony Marron Park. So if you're able to come out to the community meeting like that, we'd love for that to happen. And if you are interested in hosting a small gathering in your backyard with your neighbors, we'd love to hear that response, and please let us know if you're interested in that. So I'm going to pass on the torch to Ann Olson, who is president of Buffalo Bayou Partnership. Oh, I also need to mention there is an interpretation option at the bottom of your screen for any Spanish speakers. So just click on that, and we have 2 interpreters that are taking turns interpreting in Spanish. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We will answer these questions and respond to your comments at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Also, the agenda for tonight, we'll introduce the project, go over the design approach, and then at the end, there will be a Q&A. Now to Ann.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I think we can go on to the next slide. Yes. First, I wanted to thank our co-sponsor tonight, Houston Parks and Recreation Department. And I think the acting director, Kenneth Allen, is actually on the meeting call. So thank you, Kenneth, for joining us. And a little bit later in the program, you're going to be hearing from our consultant team, Michael Ben Valkenburg Associates and Natalie Appel Architects. We also have Kimberly Horn on the team, and another project of ours called Lockwood South is being represented by Wagner Involved. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Buffalo Bayou, like Jessica said, we're the nonprofit that's restoring and revitalizing Buffalo Bayou from Shepherd Drive all the way to the Port of Houston turning basin on the east. I think most people are probably familiar with our projects in downtown, west of downtown, Buffalo Bayou Park being our most notable and visible project, our most recent project. But we also have developed Sesquicentennial Park in back of the Wortham Theater Center, and have restored the Sunset Coffee Building and Allen's Landing in downtown. So while people are familiar with those projects, a lot of people don't realize that we've been very quietly working east of downtown for many, many years. We've purchased property. At one point, we owned about 70 acres, 75 acres of property. Since then, we've donated considerable amounts of property to the Parks Department and to Harris County. We've also been building hike and bike trails and also purchasing some incredible former industrial sites that we'll talk a little bit about later on in the program that relate to Tony Marron Park. We also developed Yolanda Black Navarro Buffalo Bend Nature Park. Many of you remember Yolanda. She was a very, very well-known East End civic activist. And this is a park located out at the Port of Houston Turning Basin. We put together all the property. Then we donated the site to Harris County Precinct 2. And since then, we've developed the site, a really great natural area, great for volunteering, also a great site to see wildlife. So as Jessica mentioned, tonight's presentation is about our Buffalo Bayou East master plan and specifically Tony Marron Park. But Buffalo Bayou East is from US 59, just outside downtown, all the way to the Port of Houston Turning Basin. So we launched this master planning effort about 3 years ago. We had a very, very robust community engagement effort where we went out and met with probably over 700 people. We had a lot of social media posts. We met with civic associations, focus groups, all just to get the community's input into what they wanted to see along Buffalo Bayou East. And the master planning effort culminated in an incredible all-day celebration at Turkey Bend. This is a site that we own just east of Lockwood Drive. We had over 1,000 people come to the event over the course of that day. So the Buffalo Bayou East plan focuses on 4 major values: authenticity, inclusivity, connectivity, and resiliency. Authenticity. We want these parks and trails to reflect the cultural and the industrial legacy of this part of town. Inclusivity. We're trying to catalyze investment and inclusive growth that doesn't leave longtime residents and businesses behind. Connectivity, our organization's done a lot of hike and bike trail building east to west, but not a lot north to south. And the neighborhoods of the 5th Ward north of the Bayou and the East End south of the Bayou have historically been cut off from the waterway. And so a large part of our plan focuses on connectivity, not only the trails along the Bayou, but bikeways along all the major thoroughfares. And finally, resiliency. And we're not just talking here about environmental resiliency, but economic and social prosperity as well. So the master plan is divided into 4 major areas, and these circles show you the 4 major areas. We have the downtown gateway, which is the main entrance into Buffalo Bayou East, the central hub, and this is what we'll be focusing on tonight, the industrial district, and then finally the eastern terminus. Since launching the plan, I guess it was October 2019, we've been very, very lucky, and we've received some very significant grants from major foundations, the Houston Endowment, the Brown Foundation, and the Powell Foundation. And these grants have allowed us to accelerate this master plan a lot more quickly than we had ever imagined. And these are some of the sites, if you just go back, Turkey Bend, which I mentioned is just east of Lockwood. That is one site that we're focusing on right now. Jaffet Creek, a tributary that leads up into the 5th Ward. A Buffalo Bend connection. This will connect Buffalo Bend Nature Park to Hidalgo Park. And finally, Tony Marron Park. And this is the focus of tonight's presentation. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Tony Marron Park, it's located on North York Street. North York sometimes is referred to Waco. It changes its name several times, but it's just off Navigation Boulevard. So very, very close to destinations like Ninfa's restaurant. So right now we're going to go to a live poll, and Jessica's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Jessica, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I was muted the whole time. But you see the questions. We are going to show you the results at the end of the presentation, just to show you how people are planning on getting to Tony Marron Park. To ask the questions again, how will you get to Tony Marron Park? Walking, biking, driving, or public transportation? And then what is your age? Under 20 years old, 20 to 40 years old, 40 to 60 years old, and over 60 years old. And again, we will present the results at the end of the presentation. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Sorry, I don't know why my mute's not working, but sorry, we're having a bit of miscommunication. This is our first time doing this kind of virtual meeting, so we appreciate your patience. I'm going to introduce Chris Matthews with MVVA. And share the results. Chris, would you like to come on?
If you could turn my video on, please.
Oh, okay, yes, 1 second. Okay, there we are. Did you want to talk through the results of this poll, or did you want to wait till the end?
No, I think I'll start straight into the design approach. We could discuss the polls towards the end when we have all the questions. So yeah, hi everybody. My name's Chris Matthews. The lead landscape architect on the project. Some of you may have met me before. I came down over the last few years on the master plan to meet with you all, both in the 2nd Ward and the 5th Ward. And we're really delighted now to be focusing in on Tony Marron Park to actually make some of those big ideas that we discussed with you in the master plan into a reality. So Tony Marron Park is an existing park right there next to North York on the Bayou. It's about 19 acres at the moment. It's a City of Houston park. And this project will include some upgrades to the existing park, but also quite excitingly, a new area just to the east, which is 11 acres, the expansion site. And then on the other side of North York, there's another site that's 7.5 acres. So it's going to add up to a fairly substantial neighborhood park with those 3 areas combined. One exciting thing that we hope was going to be possible, and it looks like it is the conversion of an old rail line that runs between the neighborhood and the parks into a local street with sidewalks and cycle tracks, which connects between Lockwood and North York Street. And the significance of that is that it'll connect 2 of the early projects that came out of the master plan, Tony Marron Park and Lockwood South, which is a small neighborhood development with mixed income housing and strong green connections from the neighborhood to the bayou. So we're hoping when both of these projects are connected and finished, that it'll really create a strong center, strong landscape center to the master plan. Next slide, please. Another area which we won't discuss in much detail today, but there are several interesting ideas for, is next to the North York site, there's a possibility of the Houston Railroad Museum could go within that pink area. It's nice because there's an existing rail line that's no longer used that runs through the site, so we could actually bring the trains in on that rail line and use them as exhibits with this museum building overlooking the bayou. So this is the view from the north side of the bayou, looking back towards the second ward. You could see the soccer fields and the parking lot of the existing Tony Marron Park with the expansion site behind it. That's currently not accessible to the public. And in fact, the Bayou Trail stops there. And then the North York site in the foreground with terrific views over the bayou. Looking from the other direction, you're probably all familiar with this photo, and enough to say that it's a well-loved and very well-used neighborhood park right now. In fact, the soccer fields are so well used that the grass is rather worn on them. I've never been there and not seen a soccer game going on. So part of the park that you won't know is the area that's currently closed to the public. It hosts some buildings that old industrial buildings, these steel frame buildings that at first glance may not look very attractive, but we've had them assessed by our architects, Natalie, who will speak later. And we think there's great potential to reuse these as structures within the park. The North York site is the location where the Rice boat crew put their boats into the water. There's water access, bayou access right there, which is quite rare on the east side of town. But as you can see, the trail is far from ideal and the whole area really needs cleaning up. So we had a series of meetings during the master plan process, and some key ideas came out of those meetings related to Tony Marron. What we really heard was that first and foremost, you wanted this to be a really terrific neighborhood park. Not to say that people from other parts of the city might not come here, but primarily it would be for the surrounding neighborhoods and the activities and characters that would appeal to all of you guys that live nearby. So what we heard was based around 5 or 6 different ideas. The need for gathering spaces for events and informal gatherings, the connectivity, the trail system along the bayou is growing. We're making new connections. This park will help a lot with that, connecting all the way to downtown. That it should be founded strongly in community, and that's why we really want to hear from you this evening, your ideas for the park. Plenty of recreational activities, both passive recreation, just relaxing, or active recreations, and also sports. And then how to get down to the water. And we sort of aggregated those comments into four simple principles, I guess, that we're going to develop the park from. Next slide, please. So Tony Marron Park, well loved. Let's build from what's there rather than, and keep all the great things that are there rather than starting afresh, obviously. Open up and connect the park. This is where the Bayou Trail comes to a halt at the expansion area, the area that's not presently open to the public. And I believe that we can make that trail connection rather soon. Access to the bayou is important, and actually right across from the Tony Marron Park is the mouth of Jaffet Creek. And Anne's working with another team of landscape architects to improve the landscape on the other side of the bayou. And offer something for everyone. Make sure that nobody's left out. You know, whether it's soccer, catching butterflies, just having a nap under a tree. It has to be something for everyone, and it has to work well on a cloudy Tuesday morning or a sunny Sunday afternoon. So this is just an early illustrative plan, and Fletch on our team will explain the elements that we're showing here. But I think the big picture idea is that when all is said and done, we want the entire area to feel like a single park, like a single landscape, to bring those three distinct areas together, so that the whole becomes more than a sum of the parts. And with that, I will hand it over to Fletch.
Great, thanks, Chris. So everyone, I have not met most of you. My name is Fletch Phillips. I'm a landscape architect with Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, and I'm the project manager for the design team working on this concept design for Tony Marron Park. I'm really thankful that so many of you are able to join us tonight. I'm sorry we can't all be together in the same place, but hopefully, like Jessica said, we'll have future meetings, maybe even on the site, on the park, where we can get together and look at this. So tonight, like Chris said, I just want to walk through some of the early ideas and some of the program and different types of spaces that we're starting to imagine are possible in the park. And what we're really interested in is hearing from all of you feedback on what you're excited about, what you're not excited about. So we have a question and answer session. Once the presentation's done, we'll have some time to really talk about it. But please enter comments and questions in the chat, and at the end, we'll try to get through as many as we can and really have an open conversation. So I'm just going to walk through some of the basic ideas, starting with access and circulation. So the park today has a lot of great features, like Chris said, but it's in a lot of ways really hard to get to and hard to find. So we really want to open up access to the site, starting with people that are walking here. So creating great entries and moments of arrival, whether you're coming from the 2nd ward or the 5th ward. If you go back a slide, I mean, I just want to point out this idea for a pedestrian bridge that comes from the north side of the bayou, because the park's always been conceived as a central neighborhood park for both the 2nd and 5th wards. So this idea that it is really easy to get to from the north side of the bayou is really important to us. And then also that it's connected to the Bayou Trail, and the Bayou Trail is kind of seamlessly moving east and west through this space. Inside the park, the pedestrian trails, so there's a lot of different loops, a lot of different ways to move throughout the park. So whether you're here going on a jog, trying to spend as much time moving around the park as possible, or whether you're trying to move very quickly and efficiently, trying to get to your destination. There's kind of a network of trails that really make the entire place feel well connected. For bikers, we know and we learned from the master planning exercise how important biking is, and that the Bayou Trail connects east and west, but like Anne said, that we're also connecting into the neighborhood so that there's convenient, safe ways to bike through the site, and that there's bike parking in convenient locations. And then lastly, for people who are driving to the site, we are going to increase the amount of parking. So we're going to start with the parking that's already there and add an additional parking lot, as well as have some parking along the new Foley Street extension. So in total, the goal is to have more than 100 parking spots. And we're working really closely with an amazing team of engineers who are looking at exactly what type of parking, how many spots, and what's the appropriate way to handle circulation on the site. So the Buffalo Bayou Trail in this moment, so if you say you're coming all the way down from downtown Houston, this should be an easy place to get off of your bike, enter the park, eat lunch, and then get back on the trail. And similarly, if you're in the park, it's gonna be very convenient to hop on the trail and plug into the rest of the green spaces throughout the entire kind of network of parks along the bayou. Okay, so now I'm just going to walk through a couple of the different areas. So right at the intersection of North York and the new Foley Street is an area that's currently, there's nothing there, but it is the location where so many people arrive to the park. So we're imagining what can be an entry garden, a place that there's seating, there's shade, there's ways, kind of easy ways to meet with your friends before entering the larger park. Second is the sports. So we know that there's 2 great soccer fields. I even saw in the comments that they are used by several schools as practice facilities. So we want to keep 2 soccer fields, improve them even, and build on that by adding additional types of sports. So it could be court sports or things like bocce or ping pong. And we have a poll question after I'm done talking that we'd love to hear from you what types of sports or games you might be interested in the space. In the center of the park, we have what we're calling the Great Lawn. So this would be a large kind of open rolling lawn that could be used by everyone for all different types of activities. So what's great about a rolling lawn as the centerpiece is that whether you're one person trying to get out and experience nature, or whether you're a large party trying to take over a larger space, it's really a flexible thing. If you go to the next slide, there's a great image of what we imagine is possible here. So it would be great for picnicking and having kind of large groups gather. But again, if you're there early in the morning walking your dog, it's also kind of a beautiful experience of nature. We building from the master plan feedback, we know how important a great playground is to have in this Tony Marron Park. So we're imagining building a fairly large playground. What's drawn here is about 2 acres of land. but there's all different types of play that it could be. It could be water play or nature-based play. And we're really interested in hearing from you all what type of playground you're most interested in. And we'll show some images later of different types of play. But we're looking at this location because it's convenient, it's easy to access from the entry, it's close to parking. And then Natalie and the architecture team is going to talk a little bit about how the buildings can even support the playground. This is an example of nature play. So the next area is a barbecue plaza. Again, building on feedback of what we've heard so far through the engagement process, we've learned about the importance of food and the importance of having large places to gather. So we're imagining a barbecue plaza that could have lots of grills for anyone to use, areas for shade, lots of different tables. So this could really become a very active place where you could get together, bring food, cook, spend time together in the park. So that's the barbecue plaza. So just want to go through a couple, we have this model that I'm just going to show a couple of views of to kind of conclude and give everyone kind of an orientation of what we've started on. So really important again that we're opening up and connecting, that each neighborhood feels that Tony Marron Park is easy to get to, the entrances are clear and convenient and safe, and that the Buffalo Bayou Trail is well connected and seamless along the bayou. Let's go to the next one. And then what we're building from what's there. So Chris actually showed an image earlier. There's some existing buildings on the site that we want to work with and improve. There's also these great existing trees. So what was once a road for cars with an alley of trees could become a great promenade. So using the trees that are there, but giving them kind of new life as part of the park. Create access to the bayou. We saw the comment that mentioned, what about arriving to the park even by kayak? Absolutely. We imagine this being really integrally connected to the bayou. Important that there are ways to get in and out, to walk along the bank of the bayou, and even pull your kayak in and out. So this is the site on north of York, and that's a bayou lawn and a boat launch that could be usable by anyone. And then finally, offer something for everyone. So again, lots of different ways to use this site, not just soccer, but play, different types of sports, picnicking, walks through nature. So there's a little bit of everything. No matter who you are and what you come to the park to do, you'll find something here. Okay, so we're going to have a poll and ask a few questions. So please do fill out your answers on the polls that pop up. And any kind of other questions or comments, we're going to address them during the Q&A session. So the first one is, what are you most looking forward to doing at Tony Marron Park? Biking, running, and walking on the trails, playing at the playground and sports fields, picnicking and grilling, or experiencing nature. And the next one, so what kind of sports or games might you be interested in the park? We know you already have soccer. We know how important that is. So are you really interested in playing soccer? Would you be interested in sports courts like basketball or volleyball? Maybe yard games like bocce or horseshoes. Just saw someone put in pickleball. Or maybe table games like chess and ping pong. So really interested to hear kind of what types of sports and games you might be interested in. And the next one, I think we have one more here. Right. So types of playground that you'd like to see in the park. We talked about nature play, so really kind of embed it with trees and shade and natural elements. Water play, or there could be fountains and jets and sand, uh, kind of similar to this image under option B. Imaginative play, and the last one is a kind of story garden, so something more quieter, more intimate. Okay, I think that is the poll questions for the landscape section. And now the architecture team is going to join us and tell us a bit about the park buildings.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Natalie Appel with Natalie Appel and Associates Architects, and I have my colleagues Sarah and Donna with me tonight to help address any of our building issues and answer questions. We are really excited to be joining this effort by Buffalo Bayou Partnership and the MBVA architecture team, landscape architecture team, as we believe that park buildings are there to support the landscape and everything that people want to do in the landscape. We love the relationship between buildings and landscape and want to try to develop that as much as possible. As came out of the community meetings that have been held, we also believe connecting to culture is a strong key to making something that the community will love for years to come. And that means connecting to all kinds of culture, from arts and performance to food and what people simply like to do when they walk to a park for a weekend picnic. We also know how much families mean to everyone using a park, and that's one of the best things about being at a park. There's something for all ages. There's something that people can do with their own age group, while other people of other age groups are enjoying watching it as well. There's just a big opportunity to get together many generations in a park. And we love the fact that we might be able to provide some of the park structures that allow this to happen in an expanded way, even more than the existing Tony Marron Park does. I'd like to start by just going over again the buildings that exist on the site, especially on the expansion site, because we want to maintain the pavilion on the existing Tony Marron Park site. And I'll show you more about that now. But the beautiful thing, especially with the kind of industrial heritage that happens on this site and nearby in this neighborhood, is that we have a long string of incredible metal buildings that don't look like a heck of a lot right now, as Chris pointed out earlier, but they are in good enough structural shape to reuse. The skin can be manipulated. The siding on the big sheds can be removed. We have all kinds of ideas for new interventions to these existing buildings. And the next slide, this slide shows a few of the kinds of things that we can do. Metal buildings are infinitely flexible. They are recyclable, and they accept any number of interventions on the exterior, as well as opening up the roof to some additional light. We can remove roofing in some parts and replace it with other more light filtering things. We can add solar panels to give energy to the park. We can do so many things with the existing structures that are there. And some of these ideas for energizing the buildings also include, beyond letting in light and ventilation, also include wonderful artistic efforts from landscape to murals to light installations, new materials, new ways for community, local artists to contribute to these buildings. And there's almost 20,000 square feet of these buildings on the East expansion site. So in the new plan the area that I just went over with you with all the 20,000 square feet of existing buildings is to the east, which is to the right on the slide. Then in the middle is the existing pavilion that what we'd like to do is add new restrooms, updated restrooms to. And then over on the left, there's an area that's being called park maintenance, but it's actually much more than that. So let's go to the next slide and start with that maintenance area. We have developed a plan for using new metal buildings. This North York site has no existing structures on it right now, except for the wonderful boat ramp, which is such an opportunity. So we're looking at backing up to the boundary of the site, letting most of the space be open for landscape and new park development, but using that western boundary of the site where it's got good street access for some of the park maintenance facilities that are needed. But there's also wonderful opportunity to give a new home to the boating operations, which every day is out on the bayou cleaning up Buffalo Bayou with volunteers. So you see a few of those happy volunteers right now. The upper right image is showing one of the boat operations in progress. And we think that it's a great opportunity for volunteers to be able to come to the northern end of our new building, see the kind of invitation to a nice orientation area for bayou management and bayou cleanup. And also it opens on to the new bayou lawn. So I think there are some nice public opportunities for that new facility. The second area in the existing Tony Marron Park is the lovely existing park pavilion that we really enjoy. And this position diagram shows you how important it is. It's really well placed as it was designed previously. It's at the axis or the crossing of two beautiful alleys of trees. And one side of it, the side we're looking into right now on the south, says sports courts. We think it's a great opportunity to develop more kind of horseshoes and that kind of play has been talked about. And this pavilion is also right at the heart of the center between the soccer fields. So there could be additional storage developed for soccer. There would be new restrooms developed, as I mentioned before. Next slide, please. And we think by expanding the roof line just a little bit to both the east and west, we could do these additional expansions of needs, as well as providing a really nice gathering place for people. It's right at the edge of the parking lot, and potentially a little bit of intervention on the roof to open up to a little bit more light inside so that everybody can enjoy it for wonderful park activities. Now over to the east site, which is the expansion site. This is the site that was mentioned earlier, is currently not even a part of the park. It's been an industrial site. It's been the site of a recycling business. And it's also the site right now where all of the boating operations have been housed. We have this fabulous opportunity with the existing buildings that are there to do something pretty spectacular, I think. And it's in this whole strip of buildings is in a great location because it provides a bit of a gateway between the new parking lot on the expansion side and all of the major activities that are being developed by MVVA to the west of this string of buildings. So starting at the south at the play shed, again, this is just a really simple metal building structure. If it's all opened up, perhaps a little extra roof light from the top, it becomes a wonderful place to connect families and children from the parking lot to the playground. All kinds of activities can occur in there. Very simple, very open to both sides. The next segment of the building we're calling the picnic shed. It gets a little bit closer to the main passage from parking to the Great Lawn. And it's, I think, a great activity. If you'll go back to that last slide, sorry about that. It's a great location for activities that play off of the children's playground and yet work for the entire family in all ages. We're imagining food trucks driving up on one edge of the parking lot. We're imagining markets that could go on here, picnics for families, etc. Next slide. And this is just a rendering of what it could be like after and the before situation that you see here, which is just a very simple, very repetitive building. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, lots of activities that the neighborhood has been asking for, from many more places to have family picnics to places for artists to sell their work and local farmers markets and that sort of thing. Going further north, the East Gateway is the section of really open space right now between the north and south strings of metal buildings. And what we'd like to do there is create a more welcoming, light, exciting entry and a little bit more identity for the park if you come from the east side parking lot. And I think it will add greatly to the sense of safety, security, having people there at all times, day and night, a place that you can turn on lights at night as you walk through, etc. So going further north, that East Gateway connects us to the largest piece of the existing facility, which we're calling the event shed. On one side of the event shed, there's a big extension that the boats are currently parked under. And on the other side, we think we'd like to extend out even further into the lawn with a little bit of a roof extension to add to the acoustic ability of this facility to provide for all kinds of performances, music performances, and even movies on the lawn, where everyone sitting on the Great Lawn can have a fantastic view of a stage. The other types of activities that might occur could even be potentially private activities if there's a way for the Parks Department to start doing a little bit of rentals to people for family reunions, wedding, quinceañeras, etc. And we think it's a great size and already has the kind of overall structure that's needed for all these activities, but with the addition of some beautiful art, some exciting lighting, and all of the kind of acoustic extension that we talked about extending out over the Great Lawn, we think it can house many kinds of activities. And lastly, there's a lovely little simple pavilion that's existing in the park. That's the Barbecue Plaza Center. And we know that the landscape architects have great experience with developing all kinds of grills and barbecue stations that people can freely join in with each other and and preserve the kind of community cooking parties that everyone seems to enjoy in the park. And now we have a bit of a live poll as well that we will talk about at the end. The first question, what would you like to do at the event shed? Would you like to see a concert, shop at a farm stand, host a party, get food from a food truck? And please remember that if you want to say something that's not in this poll, or if you want to say all of the above, you can use the chat box to communicate. Our next question. I hope that the buildings are designed to be authentic to the look of the neighborhood in the bayou. Have bathrooms, be bold and out of the ordinary, and be flexible for all sorts of uses. And our final question is really a simple yes and no question. Would you be interested in volunteering in future bayou cleanup efforts? And now I would like to turn this question and answer session back over to the people at Buffalo Bayou Partnership. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us through the presentation and providing your questions and comments. I'd like to offer the opportunity to ask any more questions and any comments you may have in the chat while we share these poll results. And after we share the results, we will go through and answer the questions. This is our first time using the poll feature, so thank you for your patience. Okay, for the first poll, how will you get to Tony Marron Park? The majority of people said biking, which is great. I know B-Cycle is doing a lot to put more stations out there, and biking has become really popular during the pandemic, so that's great to hear. For the second poll, regarding Tony Marron activities, and if anybody from the panel wants to come in on here and comment on these results, feel free. What are you most looking forward to doing at Tony Marron Park? Most of you said biking, running, and walking on the trails. What kind of games would you like in the park? This was pretty close, but most of you said yard games, like lawn bowling and horseshoes. And I remember there were a few other games in there that people had mentioned. And then lastly, for this section, what type of playground do you most want to see at Tony Marron Park? Most of you said nature play. And for the most recent section regarding Tony Marron Park infrastructure, what would you like to do at the event shed? And most of you said see a concert. And I remember when we were doing community meetings, a lot of people really wanted a specified music venue in this area. So that seems like a great answer. The second question, I hope that the buildings are designed to, and I was monitoring the chat during this, and most of you said, a lot of you said all of the above, and be authentic and have bathrooms. Of course, having bathrooms is important. But authenticity is very important to the group, so that's good to know. And then a lot of people are interested in future bayou cleanup efforts. As we do more work in this area, reach out to us if you're interested in volunteering, and we'll have more opportunities. Okay, so
if I could just chime in there, Jessica. I mean, when I look at those answers, I feel happy that it reflects our previous conversations that we've had about Tony Marron. I'm particularly happy that 88% of people said they would help with the bayou cleanup. It is a bit of a mess at the moment, and I know people are concerned about security. And two of the things that help, well, there are traditional security strategies that you can employ, like make sure that the major paths in the park are accessible for police cruisers if they want to do a drive-through, blue phones. But the two landscape things which really make a difference are getting it cleaned up and making it look welcoming, and having lots of people there doing things, you know, eyes on the park. Security issues really diminish when there are lots of people around. So I hope that helps answer that. And we will go through all of these answers, you know, with a fine-tooth comb and tabulate them and reflect upon them. So thank you.
Yeah, so now we've been, thank you for everyone that's been submitting comments and questions. We have received a lot. And what we're gonna try to do is go through as many as we can. If we can't get to some, we hope that everyone will stay connected through the different links that we'll put up back on the screen again before this is over. But we're gonna try to just go through as many questions and have a bit of a discussion from the design team to the partnership and the architects. So I'm just going to start from the top and kind of go in order here. And I think this one is for you, but we've gotten a lot of questions about if there's going to be areas for dogs and dog parks.
Some of those questions. So like we've been saying, this plan builds off of what we heard from both the Fifth Ward and the East End at all the meetings that we held. And I could not believe it, because most community meetings I go to, everyone does want a dog park. But we heard very loudly and clearly that there are too many stray dogs in the East End and in the Fifth Ward, and that people really didn't want a dog park. And one of the groups that's very, very active over in the East End is Barrio Dogs. And they were quite outspoken in terms of the dog park as well. So that is one of the reasons that you do not see a dog park in the plan, because we were responding to what we heard at our meetings.
Thanks, Anne. And again, I hope everyone will follow up through the online forums to stay connected. And like I said, we're going to try to go through as many as we can. So Chris, we had a question about the manicured nature of some of the park examples that we showed. And so this question says, a lot of this seems very built out and manicured. And I currently do bird watching on a regular basis. And the bayou is a bird flyway. Is there any focus on landscaping and managing for habitat for birds and other wildlife?
Yeah, so one thing that we probably didn't explain clearly enough was that we're putting all this sort of activities closer to the neighborhood and on the side of the park, and really leaving the entire edge of the bayou and the landscape closer to the bayou as natural area. And that has two benefits. Number one is when the bayou floods, the soccer fields won't end up underwater and the event shed won't be underwater. But it also provides that continuity for birds along the bayou, because we're also acutely aware that it's very unusual to have such a natural area like the bayou so close to the downtown of a big city. So preserving that in its entirety is extremely important.
Yeah, and I'll add a bit more onto that, just as I'm seeing a couple other comments related to that come in. So not only is it, like Chris was saying, kind of the wild edge, but it also does have, you know, it's the bayou. So there's flooding, there's concerns of erosion. So by giving that kind of the space to be the more kind of experience with nature, we can also address those riparian edges by replanting the slopes, stabilizing them as we need to ensure kind of the longevity of that space. But also really take advantage of this natural amenity, which is the bayou and the landscape in the right place, in an appropriate place. Okay, so I'm gonna move, let's see the next one. There's been several questions on security and specifically about the Bayou Trail. And I think it'd probably be great if both Anne and Chris spoke to this, as I know there's been a lot done on the Bayou Trail system already. But yeah, Anne, if you could speak to this a little bit, and I don't know if Chris.
Sure. One of the things that we do want to do along the trail is install lighting. We've found that on other trails that we've built in downtown and in Buffalo Bayou Park, lighting has really helped. But as Chris said, I think what park designers find is when parks are activated with activities, it serves as eyes on the street, so to speak. And the homeless don't feel comfortable when there are a lot of people around. And we know there are issues of the homeless on some areas along the bayou, just not in the East End, but in downtown as well. So I think lighting in Buffalo Bayou Park, we do have some security. And eventually I think we'd like to see something over here like that.
We had a question about amenities for the soccer field. So I'll iterate again if it wasn't clear that we're absolutely keeping 2 soccer fields in the park. Our plan showed one of them moving slightly to take advantage of the space here, but absolutely keeping both soccer fields. Chris, one question that came in is about the ability to have goals, have painted lines, kind of add amenities to make them kind of even more usable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Fletch. You know, soccer is a very, very popular game, particularly in this part of town. And I think by adding a turf field means you're going to be able to use it all year round, any day of the week, morning, noon, and night. We would, for the turf field, recommend having, I mean, not like stadium floodlights, but have lighting so that you can have a kick around in the evening. So that's the great advantage of turf, and for people that prefer to play on grass, they can do that. But at the moment, they really suffer quite a lot of wear and tear. So we think it would be a worthwhile upgrade.
Great, thank you. I think I'll ask this one. I don't know if Anne or Chris should speak to it, but is there a location where canoes and kayaks can be stored on site? You know, something like a kayak locker.
Interesting.
So you don't have to load your boat in and out of your car every time.
I don't see why not. And it could be part of the boat maintenance building, which is, you know, less than 100 yards away from the boat launch. But yeah, seems like a great idea.
I'd love to involve some sort of outfitter. We work with a company called Bayou City Adventures, And more kayaking, and especially kayaking, not so much canoeing anymore, but kayaking is becoming more and more popular on the bayou. So these are all great suggestions. I saw Elena Penzo put in a suggestion about how could there be seating near the soccer fields. And I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're really focused on the sports facilities here because we know how important they are. And we know how kind of quickly we can kind of have major benefits with fairly small moves by adding seating, adding the kind of features that are needed around those to support that activity. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Oh, sorry.
No, I just was throwing in both of those discussions about the soccer fields and amenities that might be added, as well as the kayak storage and potential for that in the future. I think what's really great about the potential for both of those things is that we have been planning these facilities in exactly the right locations to play off of those activities, so that some of these types of storage, seating, et cetera, could be added without a whole lot of trouble to some of the new structures.
Absolutely. Here's a comment on connectivity. It says it would be great to have safe and extended bike lanes to navigation, similar to what went on Polk Street. So I think this question is about connecting Tony Marron deeper into the neighborhood through bike lanes. Maybe that's a question for the partnership.
I could take that, Fletch.
Okay.
So we do, we have a very extensive network of trails, both like on street and off street trails for hiking and biking, walking. A connection all the way to navigation wouldn't be part of this particular park project, but we're working closely with the city of Houston to figure out different ways of implementing all of those ideas that we had in the master plan. So, you know, the simple one is you want to be able to go up and down the bayou to get all the way to downtown. It would be nice to have more places where you could cross it in a, say, you know, new pedestrian bridges, and one of those is part of this plan. But the other thing that's really important is connections north and south to both neighborhoods. And for anybody that's interested, the master plan is online, and you can see all of those connections described in the master plan.
I wanted to add that the East End Management District, and I think Veronica's on the call, at least she was at the beginning. They're working with Harris County Precinct 2, Commissioner Garcia, to do an East End bikeway plan. And so we've been coordinating with them. And I think this is an important point to bring up. This is a it's a huge plan, and it's a decades-long plan. And Buffalo Bayou Partnership can't accomplish everything on its own. And so the more partners we can work with, the better. And so we've been in talks and discussions with the East End District, but they're working a very robust bikeway plan right now.
Great, thank you. All right, the next one that came in is about accessibility. So how can activities for patrons with disabilities, physical or visual, be incorporated into the area? This is a small number in population, but very important for inclusivity.
Yeah, really good question. So obviously providing safe, stable, wide, and easily graded pathways is very important for people of different abilities. And, you know, just to acknowledge the fact that all of us either have or are or will have disabilities in our life, whether it's just breaking a leg or not. So This is not for a different section of the population, it's for all of us. You know, I remember I couldn't walk around when I was 6 months old, and I probably won't be able to walk around in, you know, 30 years in the future. So that's number one. The second thing is signage is extremely important, both interpretive signage, signage that can be, you know, with a braille component. What we're doing right now is concept design, so that we can all agree with a concept, and Anne can go out and raise the money to achieve that concept. And things like signage design, you normally do that later in the process. So like after, you know, we have a budget and we know what we're doing, and we're making the sort of detailed design of the project, we would have a signage consultant, and we would deal with all of those things. We're just not quite there yet.
Someone did mention seniors though, and I think that is a group that we need to take into consideration, because there are a lot of seniors in these neighborhoods. So I think if
So simple things, and like, you know, good lighting, making sure that the paving has, you know, is colored and patterned in a way that sort of like helps people that, you know, have poor eyesight to find their way around. Benches with arms so that, you know, the elderly can stand up easily. Nice shade structures in places that have a nice view so that you can rest, you know, with bottle fill stations, you can rest and have a drink. And it's all the things that, in a way, it's all the creature comforts that we would all like. You just take it to you know, more sensitive level when you're trying to think of including everybody in these things. And we have a you know, there's a sort of philosophy in landscape architecture about universal access, which means that you don't make you know, the facilities in the park are for everybody, so you don't sort of separate off areas. And last thing, which just occurred to me, is something that we've done in our office, is sensory gardens, gardens that will attract insects that you can hear, gardens that have plants and flowers that have a, you know, wonderful scent to them. So there's all the joys of landscape are for all of us. It's good, clean, free fun.
Thanks, Chris. So this one's for Anne, and it's about the planning process that we're going through. But it's a really important question that there's been a couple questions around it, so I'll summarize and ask a few questions together. So how much feedback from the Fifth Ward community will go into the planning process? How are we going to ensure that the partners are committed to authenticity and inclusivity, and the kind of principles of the master plan?
Right, that's a great question. So we have worked really, really hard to reach out not only to the East End, but to the Fifth Ward. So we had several community meetings during the main part of the master planning process. I know we had a major meeting at Deluxe Theater. We continue to work with groups up there. I think the more we can continue to listen to the neighborhoods, and this gets back to what Jessica said at the beginning, you know, we would prefer not to have a virtual meeting, but at this point in time, that's about all we can do. But if people are out there, both from the Fifth Ward and the East End, who are willing to host a small gathering in their front yard or the backyard, where we can come out and talk about the plan, we'd be more than happy to do that. And we also had a question about how do you plan to involve groups from these neighborhoods, you know, both cultural groups, businesses, that kind of thing. And we're very, very committed to involving groups. We plan to form an arts and culture committee, as well as a health and wellness committee, specifically for this project. We're also in the process of hiring a community engagement person who will be totally focused working in both the East End and in the Fifth Ward. And what we did hear from people at the community meetings was that they found Tony Marron Park to be a very accessible site that could be a meeting place, not just for the East End, but for the Fifth Ward. It does have great connection north of the bayou. So I hope that somewhat answered the question.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that's a challenging question and something that obviously we'll be working on as long as we're working on the project, is connecting with the community and making sure everyone who wants a voice in it can have one. I want to ask one and get the architects involved a little bit as well in this. There's been a handful of questions about the potential to incorporate art and work with potentially even local artists, and if there's been any ideas or thinking about that. So Natalie, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and Chris, also feel free to chime in.
And I would like Donna and Sarah from my team to pitch in on this one. Donna has been very, very active in a lot of committees that involve large neighborhoods and culture, and I'd like to hear what Donna's ideas are for that sort of committee.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about maybe having local artists design maybe some of the graphics that gets translated into the roof shade structure or the materials on the sides of these renovated buildings that we're saving and reusing. We've talked about maybe some materials, whether they're recycled materials and materials that kind of connect to the area as we kind of reskin and re-energize these buildings. And I know there's a couple of chats also about, cleanliness and contaminated land, and maybe Anne can speak to that, but we've already done the assessment of the kind of phase one. It's an environmental phase that the parks has already done for the lands that the park is on, the expanded site.
Great. Chris, any other kind of comments on art or collaboration with local artists?
All I know is that all the public meetings we had in the master plan, afterwards, I spent many a happy conversation with different artists that turned up and taught me a lot about how vibrant the art scene is in these neighborhoods. So we know it's a big interest to everybody. Again, it's a little early to be sort of engaging with individual artists, but maybe if there's groups and that you know about that we could reach out to, that would be good at this stage.
Like I mentioned, we do plan to form an arts and culture committee. And for instance, when there's another site that we're working on, Turkey Bend, and when young people came to the community meetings, they told us that some of the graffiti at this site featured some of the best known graffiti artists in that area. So even if it's nice graffiti, that's even an art form that can be incorporated. But we do plan to work with musical groups, dance groups. We've worked with an artist, and I think Henry's on the call, Henry Sanchez, who worked on a public art project with us, and he lives in, I believe it's Magnolia Park.
Yeah, and we've got a few people volunteering on the chat, right, to be part of the artist. So I think having that kind of community involvement and provides that connectivity.
Right.
It is fantastic. And there is also in the area a kind of big resurgence of maker spaces. And we got some comments from the previous community meetings about that. I think that would be another great opportunity, because we've talked about incorporating art in maybe more traditional ways, but also actually making objects, making pieces of the facade of a building that's meant to be a breathable panel could be an extremely exciting opportunity. And we have the facilities all around the East End where people are doing that day and night and making incredible work.
And Buffalo Bayou has a long time commitment to public art. And we have someone on our staff that has quite a bit of experience with public art. So it will definitely be something that we'll be focused on.
I mean, and another cool thing we could do is some kind of, temporary installation sooner rather than later to sort of get people excited about what's coming, get an artist engaged and do something. Really
Yeah, there
fun.
is a site that we own called The Silos. It's just east of Jensen Drive, and we own these massive concrete, they were formerly gravel silos. And we have worked with arts groups and having projections featured on those. So those are some of the temporary things that we can do to activate some of these sites.
So Anne, if I could just finish by, there was a comment, make sure you pay artists, don't just get volunteers. And I couldn't agree more.
Oh, totally, totally.
We're not, I was at art college about 100 years ago, and we're not in the business of ripping off people for their ideas.
And sporadically, there have been some comments on timeline, like throughout. I don't know if you are the best person to comment on the timeline.
Sure. So I think I mentioned at the beginning, right after we released the master plan, we were lucky enough to receive some major grants from 3 major foundations. And that's allowed us to accelerate this planning process a lot more quickly. So what we're in the process of doing right now is taking the visionary plan to a more site-specific level of planning. That's what we're doing tonight. We're doing that on other sites. We're using some of the funding that we've received for that. That will allow us to have a site-specific plan that we can then go out and raise funding for. We also are using some of this funding to repair some of the hike and bike trails over there to fill in the missing links. We recently purchased another piece of property. So like I say, the funding that we received is allowing us to accelerate the plan, but people have to realize that these projects, they are expensive and they take time. And this is a 20-year plan, but Tony Marron Park is one of the first projects that we're going to be focusing on and going out and raising funding for.
Great. We still have several more questions, and I'll just keep going down them. Thanks for everybody who keeps submitting. These are really great. We've had a lot of questions around kind of operations and maintenance, and the idea of the barbecue area and the soccer field, and the ideas of will they be first come, first serve, or will there be opportunities to reserve them? Anne and Chris, can you talk a little bit about the kind of operations side of this? I know it's far down the line, we're really in just concept phase, but kind of shed light a little bit on how those decisions ultimately come about in a process like this.
Yeah, I mean, they ultimately come about by us and you guys talking to each other about what's going to work best. It wouldn't make sense to have to reserve something if you went, on a Tuesday evening sometime. But there might be times when, let's say, you want to do a big family party, and there's 20 or 30 of you, and you want the grills, you want all the picnic tables. It would be nice if it might be nice if you could reserve that. So this isn't really it's not really a design problem. It's a question of like what's going to work best for you guys, because as you can imagine, if it's overly bureaucratic, then that dissuades people from using it. But if it's just a free-for-all on some of the big features, then that could be bad too. So we're listening. We have experience around the country doing this in all sorts of different ways. And just to be clear that this park is going to be maintained and operated by Buffalo Bayou Partnership, with input from the city of Houston. But they have, and Anne, you could talk to this, they have a little bit more freedom in deciding how these things get done than a purely city of Houston park would have.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, our co-sponsors tonight are the Houston Parks and Recreation Department. They're a really strong partner of ours. And I have to be really honest, all the maintenance and the operations of this park have not been totally worked out.
Oops, sorry.
But in terms of the barbecue, this is something that is now in Memorial Park, and I have to plead ignorance. I'm not sure exactly how it works. They do have these major pavilions that actually have fireplaces, and I know you do have to rent those out in advance. And then they also have these smaller little barbecues throughout the park. So it's not like this hasn't been done in city parks, because Memorial Park does have these.
So there's been a question about, okay, so as a resident from north of the bayou, access to the park is currently by crossing Hirsch-York Bridge. And it's often difficult. There's not a protected bike lane. So we can talk a little bit more about the potential to connect the Fifth Ward to Tony Marron.
Yeah, I could talk to that, Fletch. So again, in our master plan, we identified several new ways of getting to the park. In North York, we were recommending on-street cycle tracks, so sort of separate and protected cycle track. We had transportation engineers with us on the master plan that confirmed that there was enough space to do that. And the good news is that a lot of the roads in this part of town are way oversized because they were designed and built before the highway system, which has taken a lot of that traffic. So that's number one. The second is from Lyons Avenue, we were proposing a separated bike lane down Schweikart Street to the top of Jaffet Creek. And then the trail would go through alongside Jaffet Creek, which is really a kind of cool area, and then across this new bike and pedestrian bridge to Tony Marron. So we think there's going to be a lot more access from the Fifth Ward than there is right now.
A related question.
And the same goes for Lockwood and Hirsch and the other big roads that cross the bayou. They're all going to have like much better sidewalks and cycle tracks.
Thanks. And a related question is about what are we doing to make the site north of York more connected to Tony Marron? I can speak a little bit to this. One, we're going to be adding a safe pedestrian crossing across the road, so to come directly into the entrance. So crossing Hirsch, so a signalized crossing that will stop traffic and be a safe way to get across the street. And also we'll be widening and making the space below the bridge much more clearly connected. So the goal really being that it feels like one park with multiple safe ways to move from north of York and into the Tony Marron site.
Fletch, did you mention the new pedestrian crossing over North York?
That's what I was just saying, but you should add more. We did not talk about it during the presentation.
Yeah, so our engineers have recommended that there's a new pedestrian crossing, not actually at the corner of the street, but a little bit further north with a signalized, so you can press the button and the lights will stop the traffic for you. So we are considering that as part of the concept.
How many playgrounds will there be?
Well, there's one playground. It's in 2 areas at the moment. And we're thinking that one of the larger area will focus on older children's play. And the smaller area would be for younger children. I mean, mixing is good, but sometimes the younger kids get a little bit intimidated, particularly if we're thinking of nature play and a few things that are a little bit more adventurous that the older kids might be, running around. So we have a lot of experience designing playgrounds, and I think we really want this to feel like sort of not just a tot lot, but a beautiful landscape with nice shade trees and flowers and plants, and you can play in it, because as everybody who has children knows, if it's a nice place for parents to hang out, the kids get to play longer.
This next one's for the architecture team. How will we ensure that the new buildings are authentic to the neighborhood? So speak a bit more to the process of making a building that's authentic in character to a neighborhood like this.
Sarah, would you like to take this one on?
Sure. I think, first of all, we know that the area is very industrial, and we've heard feedback from previous community meeting that you would like to maintain or retain some of this industrial nature. So that's why we've been thinking a lot about preserving these metal structures and even exposing them to a certain degree where you can even see these structures from the outside, not just from the inside. And also, as we've spoken to before, adding artwork or installations from local artists. And I know that the second ward has a history of Art Deco architecture. So we're trying to preserve the pavilion that's already existing on the site that has a bit of that nature as well. So yeah, I think we'll try our best to stay true, and I'm sure you will keep us on the right track with your comments and feedback. We're really excited.
I had one thing to add to that, which is because most of these buildings are existing buildings. They're very simple in form, and they're actually, fairly low-key buildings that we thought from the outside they should be fairly quiet and sort of respectful of the landscape. But when you go inside, maybe they're just really colorful and lively and nicely lit. And, we know that people love to come out in the evenings if we've got, food trucks there and events going on, that, the evening activity around these buildings could be really quite exciting.
Yep, great points. It's the combination of the simplicity of the existing industrial structures with the artistic and cultural dynamics of the neighborhoods that are going to bring families in, and having that appear in so many ways in the interior as well as on the exterior of the buildings, I think would be just a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, and there's a question here that just popped up. Yeah, the largest space that we're calling the event space could potentially be enclosed for inside events. We do have a plan of adding a way of actually enclosing them completely using roller shutters or another technique, so that people who are not invited to the event wouldn't have access to it.
And I'll add a bit more. One of the next question that we had come in is asking if we have visited the Gathering Place in Tulsa, which is a large playground that actually MVVA worked on. And what I think important about that is it's a really great playground and a great example to look at, but it's all about Tulsa.
Fletch,
Yeah.
We did more than work on it.
We designed the entire thing.
We designed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Don't be modest.
No, MVVA designed the Gathering Place for Tulsa. But what I was going to say is that that is all about Tulsa. So it's a great example, and we're going to make it a fantastic playground and park here as well, but it's going to be all about Houston, all about the East End. And I think that's one of the challenges of looking at other projects as an inspiration is this is going to be completely new and it's going to be tied to the site and to this community and to the feedback we're hearing from all of you. I think we have time maybe for one more. I'm looking at Jessica.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to put out a last call for any questions. If we didn't get to your question, know that we're going to be really seriously reading this entire chat afterwards and taking into consideration the comments. And we're always open for questions. So if you want to email me, I'll make sure that your comment or question gets directed to the appropriate person. So thank you all for your questions and comments, by the way.
Great. So maybe we'll just end on a question that's talking about the next stages for this process. So what happens with Tony Marron Park next from here? The question is asking kind of a bigger timeline question around what happens between now and getting it built. But I think it'd be great to hear from the partnership on kind of next steps and what the kind of
I was going to say, I
idea
think
for this is.
hear from you about your steps in the design process, because I think I
Sure.
already answered that this is a 2, 3, 4, 5-step process. And so if you guys could let us know the process from a design perspective, I think that's really important.
Sure, I'll start, and then Chris, you should wrap it up. I think this meeting is so critical to the process, I guess is the first thing to say, because we've learned so much from the master plan. We have a lot to build on and a strong foundation, and we've put together things that start to give an idea and a form to the design. But we have so much new information and all the comments and questions coming in that we're going to incorporate it and make updates to the design and bring it to a higher level of detail. And this is all still the concept then, but then we'll incorporate your feedback and we'll bring it back and present it to you again. And that's where we're at, and we're still kind of changing and making sure that the project reflects the needs and desires of the community, as well as the practical realities and constraints of the site.
Yeah, Fletch, remind me, when are we doing this again? A couple of months?
Yeah, in a couple of months.
And we're hoping that this can possibly be an outside event at Tony Marron Park. But I'd like to reiterate, if people are willing to host a small community gathering where we can do safe distancing, we'd be more than happy to come out and also participate in any other virtual meeting. I participate in the Second Ward Super Neighborhood meetings. Would be happy to come and make a presentation. I wasn't given 5 minutes at the last one, and so I couldn't really say that much. And I think Roy's on the call, he's the president. So we'd be happy to come and give a more detailed presentation.
Yeah, so we, I spoke a little bit about this earlier, but the way our design process will work is we do, in concept design, we'll do what's professionally known as the pretty pictures, nice plan, make a 3D model and have some beautiful perspectives. And that'll allow you to understand what the place is gonna be like and the features it's gonna have, but it also allows Anne to go out and raise funds for making this a reality. And then when that's done, the next step in the design phase is, doing the construction drawings so that they can build the thing. But we're in the early stages of a 6-month process. So Fletch, we come back after a couple of months and we'll be wrapping up concept design when, late spring?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
From a fundraising perspective, I just have to say there is a lot of interest in this project. I mean, we raised several grants in a record amount of time. And even the interest that's being shown tonight, we had over 100 people on the call at the beginning, and Jessica just texted me that we still have 70% of the people who were initially on the call. So there is a great deal of interest in the project.
Can I just give a little shout out to Houston, because I love the fact that you come to public meetings with positive feedback, with great ideas, really good questions. It's hard to make everybody happy about everything that you do with a public park, because public park is a sort of realization of all our individual sort of democratic desires, right? And what I like won't be what Fletch likes, or what this, one of my neighbors likes. But I'm just really appreciative, and I've worked all over the country, and really appreciative of the positive ideas that you all bring. And I think Houstonians are naturally problem solvers. And so for us, it's just incredibly helpful to have these kind of conversations. And I wish that we were all with you in person, but one day we will be. Hopefully having a beer in the park, actually.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Oh, does anybody have anything else to add? Well, please connect with us on Instagram. We're at Buffalo Bayou. Twitter, we have Facebook. We have a TikTok, but I'm just now getting into that. So you can also follow that. But like I said, you can direct any comments to us anytime. You can email me at jmcfall@buffalobayou.org. I put my email in the chat box. There were so many great questions, a lot of great comments, and we look forward to hosting the next one. So, and again, thank you to the interpreters that we had here. I hope some of you were able to use it. It was our first time using it. So we hope that it was helpful, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, and a recording will be sent to all registrants. So be on the lookout for that in the next couple of days.
Great. Good
Thanks.
night.
Bye.
Good night.